The massive alien ship hung in Earth's orbit like a polished silver coin. After decades of searching the stars, humanity finally had its answer. They were not alone. Tom Wells adjusted his tie and took a deep breath. As Earth's chosen ambassador, the weight of this first meeting pressed on his shoulders. The shuttle docked with a soft thud, and the airlock hissed open. "Remember," his assistant Mark whispered, "stay calm, no matter what they say." The aliens called themselves Varians. They stood tall, nearly 7 feet, with smooth blue-gray skin and eyes that shimmered like polished opals. Their leader, Commander Drell, stepped forward with a slight bow. "Welcome, humans. The Galactic Federation greets you." Tom extended his hand in the universal gesture of peace. "On behalf of Earth, we thank you." The delegation moved to a large meeting room. Windows looked out onto the vastness of space, Earth floating below them like a blue jewel. "We have studied your species for some time," said Drell, settling into a chair that seemed to adjust to his form. "Your technology is adequate. Your cultures are varied and passionate. But there is one thing that puzzles us greatly." Tom nodded politely. "Please, ask anything." Drell tilted his head. "Your lifespans. They are remarkably brief. Our scans indicate humans rarely live beyond 100 of your Earth years." "That's correct," Tom replied. "The average is about 80 years now, though many live longer with good health." A sound like soft bells filled the room. Tom realized the aliens were laughing. "Forgive us," said Lyra, the Varian scientist. "It is just difficult to comprehend. A Varian childhood alone lasts 100 years. Our full lifespan typically ranges from 800 to 1200 years." Tom felt his cheeks grow warm but kept his expression neutral. Different species evolve different traits. "Indeed," Commander Drell agreed, though his voice carried a note of pity. "It is remarkable you have achieved spaceflight at all, given your limited time." The meeting continued for hours. The aliens explained the Galactic Federation, an alliance of 17 spacefaring species, all with lifespans measuring centuries. Humans were the shortest-lived intelligent species they had ever encountered. Like mayflies, one Varian whispered to another, not realizing Tom could hear. When the formal discussions ended, Tom and his team prepared to return to Earth with news of provisional Federation membership. As they gathered their notes, Tom overheard 2 Varians speaking in low tones. "Imagine living only 80 years, one said. "Their existence is merely a blink. How can they learn anything of value? By the time they understand the universe, they die. Perhaps that explains their violence and impatience. They have no time to develop wisdom." Tom cleared his throat, and the aliens turned, embarrassment clear in their stance. "Ambassador, we meant no offense," the taller one said quickly. "None taken," Tom replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We humans have a saying, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long." The aliens looked confused. "It means," Tom continued, "sometimes those with limited time accomplish extraordinary things precisely because they know their time is precious." He gathered his papers and joined the rest of the human team. As they boarded their shuttle, Mark patted his shoulder. "They look down on us," Mark said bitterly. Tom watched Earth grow larger through the viewport. "For now," he replied. "But I think the Galactic Federation is about to learn something important about humanity." The shuttle accelerated toward home, where they would prepare for what came next. Tom had seen the condescension in the aliens' eyes, but also something else. Curiosity. And that, he knew, was the first step toward understanding. The Varians had no idea what humans could accomplish in their brief lives, but they would soon find out. 6 months had passed since first contact. Earth buzzed with excitement about joining the Galactic Federation, even if only as provisional members. The news feeds constantly discussed the Varians and the other alien species, but one fact stood out above all. Humans were the children of the galaxy, with lives so short that other species could barely comprehend it. Tom Wells sat in his office, reviewing reports when his computer chimed with an incoming transmission. Ambassador Wells. Commander Drell's face appeared on screen, his opal eyes gleaming. The Federation Council extends an invitation to Earth. We request a small delegation visit our homeworld, Varia Prime. Tom straightened in his chair. We would be honored, Commander. Excellent. We are particularly interested in your scientists, perhaps a biologist, and someone who can explain your history. The way Drell said history made it sound like humans barely had any. 2 weeks later, Tom stood at the launch pad with the chosen delegation, Dr. Jane Miller, Earth's leading xenobiologist, and Professor James Clark, a historian specializing in human achievement. Both were among the best minds on Earth, though the Varians would likely see them as barely trained given their short careers. Ready for this? Tom asked as they boarded the alien shuttle. Jane nodded, her eyes bright with determination. They think we're primitive because we don't live as long. I'm going to change their minds. James smiled, patting his tablet. I've loaded 5,000 years of human history. Let's see what they make of that. The journey to Varia Prime took 3 weeks. During that time, the humans learned more about the Federation species. The Krell lived for 600 years. The Norians reached 950. The Eldamar could touch 1,400 years if they avoided accidents. No wonder they think we're like insects, Jane said one evening. Looking at her data, most of them are still considered adolescents at our retirement age. James looked up from his reading. But have you noticed something strange in these reports? Their technological advancement seems slow. What do you mean? Tom asked. The Varians have been spacefaring for 20,000 years, but their technology isn't 20,000 years ahead of ours. In fact, some of our newest innovations seem to surprise them. Jane tapped her screen thoughtfully. Maybe when you live for a millennium, you're not in a hurry. The shuttle finally arrived at Varia Prime. The planet was beautiful, vast cities of crystalline towers surrounded by carefully maintained wilderness. Their hosts met them at the landing pad. Welcome to our world, said Professor Elon, a Varian scientist who would be their guide. I have been studying humans for nearly 40 years now. Impressive dedication, Tom replied politely. Elon waved his hand dismissively. Oh, it's merely a brief study. Not even 5% of my life. A small hobby, you might say. The humans exchanged glances but said nothing. Their quarters were luxurious, though designed for beings with different proportions. That evening, they gathered in Tom's room. Did you notice how they're treating us? Jane asked, her voice low. Like we're clever pets. James nodded. One of them asked if I'd had enough time in my short life to properly study history. His laugh was without humor. I have 3 PhDs and have written 15 books. Tom paced the room. They've set up a series of interviews and tests. They're studying us. We're not here as equals. We're here as curiosities. Jane's expression hardened. Then let's be the most fascinating curiosities they've ever seen. I've been thinking, James said, pulling out his tablet. If their long lives have made them complacent, maybe our short lives have given us an edge they can't understand. Tom looked out the window at the alien city, lights twinkling against the darkening sky. Tomorrow, we show them what humans can do. They think our short lives make us lesser beings. Let's prove them wrong. The 3 humans stayed up late into the night, planning their approach. The Varians had invited them here to study human limitations. Instead, they would demonstrate human potential. Little did the aliens know that the mayflies of Earth had brought with them the fire of human determination. Morning came on Varia Prime with a soft purple glow. The human delegation gathered in the Grand Hall of the Science Academy, where several Varian officials waited. Today we begin our cultural exchange, announced Professor Elon. We are most interested in understanding how your species copes with such limited time. Tom nodded respectfully. We're happy to share. Perhaps Professor Clark could start with a brief overview of human history. James stepped forward, connecting his tablet to the Varian display system. "Thank you. I've prepared a summary of key human achievements." The display lit up with a timeline of human history. James spoke clearly and confidently as he moved through the ages, from early civilizations to space exploration, all condensed into a 30-minute presentation. When he finished, the room was silent. "You developed from stone tools to space travel in less than 10,000 years?" asked a Varian historian, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Yes," James replied. "And most of our technological advancement happened in just the last 300 years. The Varians exchanged troubled glances. "But how is this possible?" Professor Elon asked. "Our own journey from basic tools to space travel took nearly 50,000 years." James smiled. "We have a saying on Earth: necessity is the mother of invention. When your life is short, you cannot afford to wait." Dr. Jane Miller took the floor next, displaying her research on human and Varian biology. "I've analyzed the data you shared," she said. "Interesting how your cells regenerate so efficiently. But I've noticed something unexpected in your society statistics." She showed a chart comparing innovation rates among the Federation species. "There seems to be a direct correlation between shorter lifespans and faster technological advancement. The Krell, with their 600-year lifespan, innovate twice as fast as the Eldamar, who live for 1,400 years." A young Varian scientist named Trell leaned forward. This challenges our fundamental assumptions." "There's more," Jane continued. "Your birth rates have been declining for 5,000 years. Your population is aging, with fewer new minds joining society." Tom watched the aliens' reactions carefully. Their discomfort was obvious now. Professor Elon tried to regain control of the discussion. "While your rate of development is unexpected, surely the wisdom gained through centuries of life must count for something." James nodded thoughtfully. "Wisdom is valuable, but so is the urgency that comes with mortality." He displayed images of Earth's greatest achievements: the pyramids, the moon landing, medical breakthroughs. Humans create knowing we won't see the far future. The builders of these pyramids knew they wouldn't live to see them stand for thousands of years. Yet they built for eternity anyway. One elderly Varian raised a hand. "But doesn't your short life make you afraid?" Tom stepped forward. "Yes, sometimes. But that fear drives us. We have a concept called memento mori. Remember, you must die. It doesn't paralyze us. It motivates us." The discussions continued into the evening. The humans could see their words had shaken the Varians' confidence. What they had seen as a weakness in humans was perhaps a strength. That night, in their quarters, the three humans gathered again. "Did you see their faces?" Jane asked, her eyes bright with excitement. "When they realized how fast we've advanced." James nodded. "They've been alive for centuries, but many of them have accomplished less than a human does in decades." "We're making progress," Tom said, "but we're still curiosities to them, not equals." A chime at the door interrupted them. It was Trell, the young Varian scientist. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said hesitantly, "but I can't stop thinking about what you shared today. Our society, it moves so slowly. We have time, so we take time." He looked at the humans with new respect. "Perhaps we have something to learn from your people after all." Tom invited him in. This was the first step, one alien beginning to see humans not with pity, but with wonder. A week into the human delegation's stay on Varia Prime, alarms blared through the city. Screens throughout the Science Academy flashed with urgent messages. Tom, Jane, and James rushed to the main hall where Varians gathered in concerned groups. "What's happening?" Tom asked Trell, who had become their unofficial guide. Trell's opal eyes were wide with worry. "A space anomaly has appeared near the Krell homeworld. It's expanding rapidly, some kind of spatial rift that's emitting dangerous radiation." Professor Elon approached, his usual calm demeanor replaced with tension. "The Federation Council is convening an emergency session. Your presence is not required, but you may observe if you wish." Tom nodded. "We would appreciate that." The council chamber was massive, with representatives from all 17 Federation species attending both in person and via holographic projection. The humans sat quietly in the observer section as scientists presented data on the anomaly. "The rift is growing at a rate of 6% per day," a Krell scientist explained. "At this rate, it will reach populated areas of our system within 60 days. We need immediate action," the Krell ambassador urged. What followed stunned the human observers. Instead of quick decisions, the council began a methodical, plotting discussion. Various committees were formed to study different aspects of the problem. Debates broke out about historical precedents from thousands of years ago. After 3 hours, Tom leaned toward Jane and James. "They're not actually doing anything," he whispered. "Just talking." Jane nodded. "They're approaching this like they have all the time in the world." "But they don't," James replied. "Not if that report was accurate." By the end of the day, the council had only agreed to continue discussions the following week after more data was collected. The humans returned to their quarters, troubled by what they'd witnessed. "I don't understand," Tom said. "Lives are at risk, and they're scheduling more meetings." James opened his tablet. "Remember what we discovered about their society. When you live for a millennium, urgency isn't in your vocabulary." "Well, it should be," Jane said firmly. "I've been looking at the data they shared. This anomaly isn't waiting for committee approval." They worked through the night, analyzing the information. By morning, they had developed a potential approach. Risky, but possible. Tom requested an audience with the council leadership. To his surprise, it was granted immediately. Ambassador Wells, Commander Drell, greeted him. "What is so urgent?" "The anomaly threatening the Krell system," Tom said directly. "We believe we have a possible solution." Drell looked surprised. "Your species has encountered such phenomena before." "No," Tom admitted, "but we've studied your data and developed a theoretical approach." He nodded to Jane, who displayed their plan. "A method to collapse the anomaly using targeted gravitational waves. This would require precise positioning of multiple ships," she explained, "and it carries approximately a 20% risk of failure." The room erupted in objections. 20% chance of failure. Unacceptable. This hasn't been properly studied. We need at least a year of simulations. Commander Drell raised a hand for silence. "While we appreciate your enthusiasm, this situation requires careful consideration by those with experience." Tom stood his ground. "With respect, Commander, this situation requires action. Your people have the knowledge, but we have the perspective of urgency." "And what would humans know of protecting worlds?" asked an elder Varian dismissively. James stepped forward. "In our short history, we faced extinction-level threats multiple times and survived. Not through centuries of deliberation, but through immediate, decisive action." The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Trell spoke up from his junior position. "I've studied the humans' plan. It's unconventional, but the physics is sound. And while our committees debate, the anomaly grows." After tense discussion, Commander Drell made an unprecedented decision. "Ambassador Wells, your team may join our emergency response unit. Not to lead, but to advise." Tom nodded, hiding his relief. "Thank you, Commander." As they left the chamber, Jane whispered, "It's a start." "Yes," Tom replied. "Now we just need to save a world to prove our point." The emergency response fleet assembled at the edge of the Krell system. 12 ships, the finest in the Federation, hovered in formation, their crews making final preparations. Tom, Jane, and James had been assigned to the command vessel, where they worked alongside the Varian team led by Admiral Kren. "The anomaly has grown another 9% since yesterday," reported the science officer. "Radiation levels are increasing." Admiral Kren nodded slowly. "We will begin standard containment procedures." Tom exchanged glances with Jane and James. The standard procedures had been used on smaller anomalies with mixed success. This situation was far more dangerous. "Admiral," Tom said carefully, "given the size of this rift, perhaps we should consider our alternative approach." Kren's opal eyes narrowed. "Your untested theory." "We follow protocols established over centuries of experience." The first attempt failed. Containment fields collapsed under the anomaly's growing power. As the fleet regrouped, Tom approached the Admiral again. "Sir, we're losing time. The people on Krell's outer moon have already started evacuations." "We will adjust our approach," Kren insisted. "The next attempt will begin after proper calculations, perhaps 2 days from now." Jane stepped forward, data tablet in hand. "Admiral, the anomaly will be 15% larger by then. We don't have 2 days." The Admiral looked at her with surprise, not used to being challenged. Before he could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The anomaly had suddenly expanded, damaging one of the fleet ships. In the chaos that followed, James pulled Tom and Jane aside. "They won't change course until it's too late. We need to convince someone else." Their opportunity came when Trell entered the strategy room where they had gathered. The young Varian scientist looked troubled. "The Admiral has requested new simulations," he said, "but our computers say they'll take 30 hours to complete." Tom took a deep breath. "Trell, we don't have 30 hours. Will you at least look at our full plan?" Trell hesitated, then nodded. Jane quickly displayed their strategy, using modified shield generators to create precisely targeted gravitational pulses that could collapse the anomaly from multiple angles simultaneously. "This would require perfect timing," Trell said, studying the calculations. "And brave pilots," James added. "The ships would need to get dangerously close." Trell was silent for a long moment. "This goes against all our safety protocols." "Sometimes survival requires risk," Tom said quietly. After more discussion, Trell made a decision that would change his long life forever. He took their plan directly to the ship captains, bypassing Admiral Kren. When the Admiral discovered what was happening, he was furious. "This is mutiny. These humans have been among us for barely 2 weeks, and you trust their judgment over generations of our experience." "With respect, Admiral," Trell replied, standing tall. "Sometimes fresh eyes see what we have become blind to." The fleet captains sided with Trell. The human plan would proceed. What followed was 18 hours of intense preparation. The humans worked without rest, helping reprogram shield generators and calculate exact positions for each ship. "Aren't you tired?" a Varian engineer asked Jane as she completed her 12th straight hour of work. She smiled, taking a sip of the stimulant drink they'd provided. "On Earth, doctors sometimes work 30-hour shifts during emergencies. We're used to pushing our limits." As the ships moved into position, Tom joined Trell on the bridge. The anomaly loomed before them, a terrible tear in space that pulsed with deadly energy. "All ships report ready," the communications officer announced. Trell looked at Tom. "In my 200 years, I've never attempted anything this dangerous." Tom nodded. "In my 40 years, I've learned that the most important things usually are dangerous." The countdown began. Each ship activated its modified shields at precisely the right moment, creating a complex web of gravitational forces that pushed against the anomaly from all sides. For a terrifying minute, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the rift began to shrink. "It's working," Trell whispered, watching the readings. "By the stars, it's actually working." As the anomaly collapsed in on itself with a final flash of energy, cheers erupted across the fleet. The humans had succeeded where centuries of alien experience had faltered. The Krell homeworld was safe. News of the anomaly's defeat spread quickly through the Federation. The Krell government sent formal thanks, not just to the Federation fleet, but specifically mentioning the human delegation by name. It was unprecedented recognition for a provisional member species. 2 days after their return to Varia Prime, Tom, Jane, and James were summoned to the Grand Council chamber. The room was filled with representatives from all 17 Federation species, many of whom had traveled specifically for this meeting. Commander Drell addressed them as they entered. Ambassador Wells, Dr. Miller, Professor Clark, the Federation Council wishes to formally acknowledge your contribution to the Krell crisis. The three humans stood before the Council, aware of the hundreds of alien eyes watching them. What began as a cultural exchange has become something much more significant, Drell continued. For millennia, we have believed that longer lives naturally led to greater wisdom and achievement. Your actions have challenged this assumption. An elder Norian representative, her silver skin shimmering under the chamber lights, spoke next. I have lived for 820 years. In that time, I have seen many things, but never have I witnessed such rapid problem-solving as you displayed. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The theory you developed was unconventional, Admiral Kren admitted, his earlier anger replaced with reluctant respect. Our experts say it would have taken at least 2 years to arrive at a similar solution through our standard research methods. 2 years the Krell did not have, added the Krell ambassador, his voice deep and solemn. Tom stepped forward. We did what any humans would do when faced with an emergency. We acted quickly because we understand that time is precious. Jane joined him. Our short lives don't limit us. They focus us. Professor Ilan, who had been so dismissive of human lifespans during their first meetings, approached with a data tablet. We have been studying your species more carefully since the crisis. Your capacity for adaptation is remarkable. Your learning speeds are nearly 3 times faster than any Federation species. Necessity, James said with a small smile. When you only have decades instead of centuries, you learn quickly or not at all. The chamber fell quiet as Commander Drell stepped down from the Council platform to stand directly before the humans. The Federation has existed for 12,000 years, he said. In that time, we have encountered many new species, but none have challenged our fundamental beliefs as you have. He extended his hands in a formal gesture. We offer Earth immediate full membership in the Galactic Federation. Not provisional, not limited, but complete. Tom's eyes widened in surprise. Full membership typically took decades to achieve. Furthermore, Drell continued, we request that Earth establish a permanent advisory council to work with our research and emergency response teams. Your perspective would be invaluable. The implications were clear. The Federation no longer saw humans as primitive beings to be pitied for their short lives. They now recognized that humanity's brief existence had created strengths the long-lived species lacked. As the council session ended, many representatives approached the humans with questions. How did Earth's education systems work? How had humans achieved so much technological progress so quickly? Would they consider teaching Federation scientists their methods of rapid innovation? That evening, the human delegation gathered in their quarters, still processing the day's events. It's remarkable, Jane said. A week ago, they saw us as barely more than children. Now they want our advice. James nodded thoughtfully. They've lived so long in their way that they couldn't see its limitations. Sometimes it takes an outsider's perspective. Tom looked out at the Varian capital city. The real challenge begins now. We need to build a true partnership, not humans teaching aliens or aliens teaching humans, but both learning from each other. A paradigm shift, Jane said with a smile. For both our species. On the other side of the city, the Federation Council continued their discussions late into the night. For beings who normally measured decisions in years and decades, they were moving with unusual speed. Humanity had changed them already. 20 years had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Federation. The small blue planet that had once been seen as home to pitiably short-lived beings was now respected throughout the galaxy. Tom Wells, now in his 60s with silver hair and lines around his eyes, stood at the window of the Earth Embassy on Varia Prime. Behind him, a new human delegation prepared for the upcoming Federation anniversary celebration. Ambassador Wells, call the familiar voice. It is good to see you again. Tom turned to find Trell entering the room. The Varian showed little change. Perhaps a slightly deeper blue to his skin, but otherwise the same as when they'd first met 2 decades ago. Council Leader Trell, Tom smiled, clasping his friend's hand. Congratulations on your election. Trell had risen quickly through the ranks of Varian leadership, his willingness to embrace new ideas making him popular among younger generations across the Federation. I would not hold this position if not for what I learned from you and your team, Trell said honestly. You changed everything. Together, they walked through the embassy gardens, where plants from Earth grew alongside Varian flora in a symbolic blend of worlds. How is Dr. Miller? Trell asked. I had hoped to see her today. Tom's expression grew solemn. Jane passed away last year. Her research on cross-species medicine continued until the end. Trell stopped walking, genuine sadness in his opal eyes. I am sorry. It still surprises me how quickly. I mean, it's all right, Tom said gently. We understand how our mortality appears to you, and Professor Clark. James as well, though he doesn't travel off Earth anymore. He's 93 now, still teaching at the university. Trell nodded thoughtfully. It is strange. In 20 years, humans have changed the Federation more than the previous 1,000. Yet in that same time, so many of your pioneers have died. Tom finished for him. Yes, but that's part of why we accomplished so much. They reached a new monument in the central plaza, a striking sculpture showing human and alien figures working together, their hands supporting a sphere representing the galaxy. The Legacy Monument, Trell explained, dedicated to the human-led teams that have solved 11 major crises since you joined the Federation. All around them, the evidence of human influence was clear. Varian students hurried by, moving with a sense of purpose that would have been rare before. Buildings displayed both the elegant curves of traditional Varian architecture and the bold, efficient lines of human design. The human approach has become quite fashionable, Trell said with amusement. Our young ones now set 5-year goals instead of century plans. They want results in their early lives, not just their later centuries. And your traditionalists? Tom asked. Still grumbling, but adapting. It's hard to argue with success. Our technological advancement has tripled in pace since we adopted human educational methods. Later that evening, at the grand celebration, Tom was asked to give a speech. As he stood before the gathered representatives of 17 worlds, he thought about how far they had all come. 20 years ago, I stood before you as a curiosity, a being whose life would be over in what you considered the blink of an eye. Today, I stand before you as a partner. The hall was silent, all attention on the aging human. Most of the original human delegation who first visited Varia Prime are gone now. Their bodies have returned to the Earth that bore them. But what they started lives on in all of you, Tom gestured to the young Varians and members of other species who had embraced human ideas. We humans do not fear our short lives. We fear being forgotten. And thanks to you, we never will be. Our legacy is not in how long we live, but in how we change the universe while we are here. The applause that followed was thunderous. As the celebration continued, Trell found Tom again. There is something I've been meaning to ask you, the Varian said. In all these years of working together, sharing knowledge, I still don't fully understand what drives humans to accomplish so much in so little time. Tom smiled. It's simple, really, because our time is limited. Every moment matters. We live each day knowing it represents a larger portion of our total existence than it does for you. He looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's crystal dome. We may not see the distant future, but we work to make it better anyway. That's humanity's greatest strength. And now, it's becoming one of yours too. Around them, the Federation celebrated not just its past, but a future forever changed by the species whose lives were brief, but burned so very bright.